Hey guys, Peter here. You might know me from AP Bio, AP Chem, and especially in this case, diseases of the human body. So in this video, I'm gonna be going over the body regions, right, along with the cavities and the serous membranes. I'm also gonna be linking a purpose game with all of these. For the people who are in my class, and by the way, if you're watching this in the future, and like you were never in my class, ignore this. The one that our teacher assigned us was great, but it didn't have all the words that we were learning in the video, and especially not on the sheet because some of the words were just added on there. So this video is kind of just helps to serve as like a way to run through all of them. If you're at home watching this, whether you're at a cafe, just trying to study, draw this out, please. Draw like a human. It doesn't have to be fancy. I don't care. Just draw it out, or play the purpose game, which will be linked below, right? And just try to label as many parts as I can, as you can. Or heck, if you're too lazy to draw, just get like a picture of a guy in anatomical position. I think that's just like a lot out there. So let's get going. So first, obviously, you got your two big regions, your appendicular and axial region. You might remember this from axial skeleton, right, and appendicular skeleton. And so these are. Let me actually move these over here, right? The appendicular region can be divided into two regions, but we'll get to that later. Mainly, first let's focus on the axial region. So this part is just your head, and here you have your neck, and over here you have your thoracic or thorax. It's very like inconsistent. In the slideshow it says thorax, but on some papers it says thoracic. For this video, I would recommend you use thorax and not thoracic, because thoracic is also like referring to the cavity as well. But if you just say thoracic region, I think that's totally fine. Okay, so then you have your abdominal region, which I'm just gonna write abs, right? And here you have your pelvic, or your pelvis. You would just say your pelvis region, at least in this diagram. And then here you have your perineum. What is the perineum, you ask? It is kind of, so imagine yourself looking at somebody's crotch. This sounds wrong, I know, but like from bottom to top view, right? So the perineum, I'll put it up on screen. Is that general area? So yeah, that's basically what the perineum is. And this whole entire part, right? That is not, not including the neck, just from the thorax to the perineum, you would call that the trunk region. And I remember how I like to remember this is trunk reminds me of trunks, like the pants. And where would you wear your clothing? In this region, right? So that's good. And now for the appendicular region, which is super hard. You have to know this. This part right here, watch out. It's called the lower limb. Right? pretty intuitive. And obviously the upper part, guess what? It's the upper limb. So not very hard at all. Yeah. So now let's get to all the bigger regions. And don't be scared. Don't click off this video. Hey, don't click off, okay? I know you probably want to go watch YouTube. We gotta lock in. So let's start off with the head, shall we? All right, let's start off with the head. So if you've taken psychology, which I think a lot of you actually have, or are in the process of taking it, all the like cephalic regions, right, like the brain parts, are identical to how they name the lobes. So this part would just be the frontal lobe, or the frontal region, right? Same name. If you haven't taken psych, frontal, right, front area. Also, frontal cortex is like also in that area. I don't think you need to know psych to know like what a frontal cortex is. It's the thing that is the reason for your decision making, and all that stuff. And then up here you have your parietal. I have to spell this right because it has like an E. Parietal kind of refers to outside. In this area, it kind of just means like up top. And over here, you would call that your temporal region. Temporal, temples, right? Your temples are on this region of the head, over here as well. Let me actually write that over here. Yeah, I'm just gonna write temp for short, and then up here is the parietal. And back here is your occipital region. Occipital, is just referring to the lobe. So occipital lobe is where you would process a majority of your vision, I believe. And if you have damage to that area, you likely, you can still, your eyes still function, right? But you can't process any of the visual information, so you're technically blind, which is crazy. Okay, so now let's go and deal with all the facial features region-ish. Some of these all start with O for some reason, weirdly enough, but there's different ways to remember them. So here, let's start off with the eyes. So it's called the orbital region. Wow, I just spelled orbit. Really. Orbital, right? How I like to remember it is orbital reminds me of like orbits, like planets, and those planets are spherical. And what else is spherical? Your eyeballs, right? So orbital. I know that's very elaborate, but stick with me. So then you have your buccal, which is your cheek, right? It's not really like a way to remember this one. And then up here, or over here, you have your otic region, which is your ear, right? Again, not much of a mnemonic for this. Yeah. And over here, why do I keep speaking the same colors? You would have your nasal region, right? This one's pretty self-explanatory. Come on, like you guys used nasal spray before, right? That's where the word comes from. And then down here, you have your mouth, which is oral, right? You would say like oral presentations in some classes, right? And over here, your chin, right? That's called. Let me actually pick a different color. That is called the mental region. Think of the thinker statue, right? How he has like his little arm on his chin and how he's quote unquote thinking. So you would pair that up with that region, which, mental thinking, right? And over here, which is this, your jaw, basically, it's called the mandibular region. Mandible refers to your jaw, so mandibular, right? Yep. And now I think we're pretty done with the head. That's good. Now let's move on to the neck, which if you want to be lazy, you can just call it the cervical region, but it's mainly divided into 4 parts. 2 of them have the same name because they're on like this same like opposite region. And here you would just use directional terms, right? So it wouldn't be too hard. So the front part of your neck, right? You would call that the anterior cervical region, right? Fair enough. And over here on the side, so away from the median, if you remember, you would call that lateral. Lateral cervical region. And on the back, this is well illustrated enough. This was lateral, by the way. The back, you would call that the posterior cervical region, or post for short. You just get post cervical or post cervical. Yeah. So now we've got the neck done. Oh wait, hold up. There's also this one area that I'm gonna get to, but yeah, no, yeah. So we've got the neck done. It's cool. Um, let's get on to the torso. So how I'm gonna do this is I'm gonna start off with the anterior view, or that's your front, right? And then we're gonna get to the posterior, and after that we're gonna go to the arms and legs. Yeah, should be pretty straightforward. So this area that I was talking about earlier. So to remember this area, you gotta remember this bone, which I think everybody knows, right? It's your collarbone, or it's called your clavicle. Clavicle, right? So here. So your clavicle, and this area is above your clavicle, so you would say the supraclavicular. And I think by now you've noticed, a lot of these words have the al and ending, right? Clavicular, cervical, mental, mandibular, and also like ar. So if you're in a pinch and you're trying to remember like a certain area, try slapping like the ar behind it. Most of the time it works. Hopefully, I mean obviously if you remember the bones and stuff. Okay, so now I zoomed in too much. So this entire area is your sternum, and obviously you guessed it, sternal, right? Self-explanatory. And then down here you have your pecs, which in the region is called the pectoral region. Again, simple, right? Cakewalk. Down here, they don't have the al ending, so you just say mammary region, right? And obviously that's where women produced milk, especially when they're pregnant. And now here, and I know this looks very intimidating, this entire region, let me actually find like a different color. Let me do black. Let's do gray. This entire region is your abdominal. Right, and it's split up into 9 sections. Most of the time you just gotta remember 6, right? Because these are the same as these, but with different directional words. So let's hold off for a second and let's start from the middle. So this upper area here. This is, so imagine your stomach as kind of like being over here, or technically it's supposed to be way upper, but I guess I marked this a little bit wrong. This is kind of like the region where your stomach is, and so obviously it's named epigastric region, right? Because it's epi kind of refers to above. I guess technically I don't know. It's not technically like above, like way above the stomach, because I think that'd be like near the sternal area. But it is the area where the stomach kind of resides. So don't think too hard about it. And then here you would have obviously your umbilical region, right? Because this is your navel, and this is where your umbilical cord was connected to, right? And just like before, epigastric, down here it's below, definitely way below the stomach. That's called hypogastric region, right? Over here, these names vary a little bit more. But how I think about it is this section is called the hypochondriac or chondrical region. Yeah, chondriacal. Yeah, hypochondrical region. And I know what you're thinking. What hypo? This here says epigastric. What is the chondrical area, right? Oh yeah, I realized I spelled it wrong. Oops. And what that's basically referring to, the chondrical area, is actually just your ribs. So obviously your ribs is like down here, right? So this is technically under it, so it's called hypochondrical. Here you would just call this your lumbar region, right? Which is also the same as the anterior view, the posterior aspect over here. Yeah, that's just how I remember it. And then down here, it's just a new word, iliac. The iliac region, so it refers to this kind of like lower part of the abdominal region. And how you would name the other side is it would depend on like the directional term. So from your view right now, if you just do like the L hand signs, I'll put it on screen. This is technically our left, and this is technically our right. But obviously in anatomy, we don't refer to our left and rights from our perspective. We refer it from the patient's perspective. So here it would actually be their left. Here it would be their right. So you would just say for this area, that's the left hypochondrial region. Left lumbar, left iliac, right hypochondrial, right lumbar, right iliac, right? Pretty self-explanatory. Not much to say. Yep. And so down here, now let's move further. We have the pelvic region. Sorry if this area is a little bit cramped. Let me actually delete that. Yep, the pelvic region. And here, down here, you have your inguinal region, which refers to your groin. So pretty self-explanatory. And here, there's like 3 names for this. So if you're lazy, right, you would just say pubic, right, because that's where your pubic hair is. But if you want to be specific between 2 genders, or the 2 sexes, sorry, you would call this for males the genital, or for females, which is in this case, that's obviously female, you would call it the pudental region. And yeah, so now we're done with the anterior aspect of the torso. Now let's move on to the posterior aspect. And I know this looks even more intimidating, so stick with me, okay? So here you have your scapula, right? That's the wing bone. That's how I like to remember it. So you would say scapular, right, region. And obviously you see this, the spine area, right, the spine line, as I like to call it. And obviously you would call that not the spinal, but the vertebral region, right? Vertebrae, right, that makes up the spine. And weirdly enough, the area that's up next to the spine, so the area that's running parallel to the spine, you would call it the paraspinal, right? Because it's running parallel to it. And this entire area, let me map it up. This entire, like this entire like anterior, the posterior aspect of the torso, mainly this upper region, you would just call the thoracic region. I don't know what you're thinking. Wait, what? Didn't we put thorax earlier down here? And that's true, but this is just how it says it in the book. I really can't control it. So that's the thoracic region. And then we also have this bottom region. With right here. That's called, I unequipped, the lumbar region. Remember how earlier I said that was the same as the torso, the stomach, the abdominal region, right? Lumbar. This would also be lumbar. And then down here, which is slightly hard to see, I apologize. Kind of due to my drawings, which I think, I don't know if I've disclosed before, but I'm not an artist, guys. This area, sacral. How I like to remember this is it's kind of near, like it's on your back, right? Kind of near your butt. And so it's sacred in a way, right? So sacral, sacred,
This is called the coccygeal. Oh shoot, that might be a little bit too hard to see. My bad. Remember the coccyx? How do you spell that? Coccyx, which is your tailbone. I think this is how you spell it. I'm really bad at spelling, guys. So that's the coccygeal. And if you look, if I kind of drew out, imagine like the left leg of the patient wasn't here, right? This would be like the perineum area. Here would be the peritoneal, right? Right. Yeah. This is. I'm just gonna like delete this. So, but just remember, it's the peritoneal area. I don't know if it comes up in tests a lot, but usually when it does, it's gonna be a different view from bottom up. Anyway, then we have this one annoying region, but actually, is that not really annoying because it's just combining the word sacral and hold on, let me move over here. Iliac. So obviously it's just be sacroiliac. I think that's how sacroiliac? It is sacroiliac. Oops. Sacroiliac. Iliac region. And this is kind of like this is like I'll put it up on screen, but it's just like this bone area on your pelvis, so that's called the sacral iliac region. And obviously, now this is kind of getting near the legs, but I'll bring it up later on. This is your butt, and you call that your glutes. So in anatomy, you call this your gluteal region. Simple. Now, let's get to the arms, because I know some of you have been eyeing this certain spot and you've been wondering to yourselves, what the heck is that? Why did I skip it? Well, I didn't, because I'm prepared, right? Except not really. This took like 2 hours to make. Anyway, all right, let's get to the arms.
All right, now let's get to the arms. Here you have this little point on your kind of like your shoulder, right? It's like the highest, I think, yeah, it's like one of the highest points in your body. You would call that the acromial region, which is also here, right? And here, let me switch. You have your deltoid. It's just where the muscle group is, I think. And then over here, section is referring to your armpit. I couldn't draw the person like raising their arm, so this is a little bit scuffed. But that was called axillary. Right? That's the axillary region. And down here, these are the easier ones to remember. The brachial, right? Brachial kind of just refers to your forearm, your what's that muscle group? Your bicep and like the area like right behind. I forgot. I'll throw it up on screen if I don't remember it. But remember this brachial here is the antecubital. Cubital is the elbow, and this is before it, so it's called antecubital. And down here, you guessed it, if it comes before brachial, antebrachial. And this is just your forearm. Down here, even lower, let me find blue. Do I not have blue? I don't have blue. Okay. You have your carpals, right? Think of the bone that's in that area. They're also called carpals. Yeah, and generally carpals refer to like a certain bone in your hand. And then here you have your thumb. Sorry if this isn't like clearly drawn out. Again, not a student, okay? Your pollex. Yeah, almost a different thing. Your thumb is your pollex, or
you know, all your fingers could be called digits, right? Remember, you count, you know, on your hands. You count numbers. Numbers are digits. And hold up before we move on. There's this big area, and that's called the palmar, right? I mean, that's your palm, palmar, self-explanatory. But there's also one more. Sorry. If you look over here, imagine this is like the back of your hand. So palmar was more on like the palm of your hand. But if you go to the full back, which I didn't draw out here because I can't draw hands, this entire area is called the manual, right? Just the back of your hand, guys. So think of manual as like manual dexterity. That's what it's referring to. So manual. So now let's move on to the back of the arm, which is mainly has like a few more similar points. So let's just whiz through these, right? Up here, acromiddle. Over here, deltoid. Here, still brachial, right? Oh, I can't spell. Brachial. And here, since it's on the back, the elbow, remember how the front was called the antecubital. So if that is before the cubital, then the elbow, which, you know, is behind antecubital, should just be cubital, right? And then everything else stays the same, right? You just have your carpal. Here, the back of your hand is manual. Digits. Pollex. And another, I forgot to mention this, sorry guys. A way for you to remember pollex as your thumbs, you can stick out your thumbs and stick them up, like pollex, right? And now, since we're done with the arms, which are pretty simple, let's get to the legs. So let's start off with this anterior view. You see this area right here? That's your hip. So that's called the coxal, right? Also back here, coxal. And also, this is also like very easy. This area is where your femur is. So you just say femoral. And they're the same for both sides, right? Regardless of like whether it's front or back, they're all femoral, which is great. Oh shoot, I should probably, yeah. Let me get. Where's okay? There's this section that I just want to like. Yeah, okay. So now we have the knee. Here, I think this bone is called the patella, so you would just call it the patellar, right? On the back, you would call that the popliteal. Let me. Okay, I need to zoom in for this. All right. I think that's like everybody's favorite word, weirdly enough. So in the front, let's see if I can get this right. We have the crural, right? And on the side, you have your fibia, right? So you would call that the fibular. And over here, right, you still have your fibular. But on the back here, instead of crural, it's called sural. Yeah. Right, you have your sural. And then over here, which I should have still highlighted. Okay. All right, your ankles, right? Similar to your wrists,
Remember how our wrists were called carpals? They're actually, for the legs or the ankles, tarpals. Right? Just a T slapped onto them. Pretty simple. Right, let's just write that over here. Tarpals. And now we get to the actual feet itself, which has a lot of stuff. So let's put what we know so far. So, right, the toes are digits. The actual big toes over here, instead of the pollex, it's called the hallux. Right. And this entire area right here, like the upper area of your foot that kind of forms the slope, that's called the dorsum. Let me do that in green. Dorsum, right? And on the back of your foot, you have your like this area right here, which is also over here. That's called the calcaneal. Kneel sounds like heel, I guess. So calcaneal. And this bottom part is where you plant your feet. So you would call that the plantar. Right. And finally, to top it off, this entire foot, your entire foot area is just called the pedal region, right? Because you use that to pedal bikes and other stuff. What else do you pedal? I don't know. And that's called, so that's called the pedal. And I think that's it for the body regions. I hope you noted down all that. There will be a purpose game. And now let's move on to hopefully maybe the cavities